In the last few classes, we had described the tools and techniques to describe the geometry of space-time. We had introduced quantities like curvature tensors and curvature scalars in those classes. Now, this was done with a purpose because we realized that gravitational field was best described in terms of the geometry of space-time. Now it's time for us to describe the dynamics of gravitational field. By dynamics of a field, we mean how the field changes at every point in time. To take a familiar example, the dynamics of electromagnetic field would have told us how the electromagnetic field would change at every point in time. The dynamics of a field is usually described in terms of dynamical equations. For electromagnetic field, these dynamical equations are basically the Maxwell's equations, which take the form the question now is, what are the analogous dynamical equations describing the dynamics of gravitational field? Such dynamical equations are usually arrived at empirically. That is, on the basis of observation, we write down equations that describes how different quantities change. A simple equation that describes weak and static gravitational field was known from the time of Newton. It is well known in the form of Newton's law of gravitation, which took the form this equation basically described how a static gravitational field between two masses m and little m acted. In this form, that gave us the force of gravitational field. R is the distance between the two masses m and little m, as well as r hat is the direction of a vector pointing from m to little m. G here is the Newton's gravitational constant. In addition to being static, we had also earlier seen that this type of a gravitational field describes only a gravitational field that is weak. The question now is, what would be the set of equations that govern a gravitational field that is not weak, it could be strong in general, and that need not be static, it could be changing in time. As a first step in this direction, we will first look at a similar law that gives us force between two static electric charges given by Coulomb's law, and expressed this is called the Coulomb's law, where this gives us the electrostatic force between charge q and little q, which acts in a direction from q to little q along the unit vector r hat, and it depends on the inverse square of the distance between the two charges q and little q. Epsilon 0 here is called the permittivity of vacuum. Comparing these two, we could see that the two forces are very similar. One could obtain one from the other by first putting a minus sign, which takes into account of the fact that this is an attractive force acting from little m to m, Then by replacing the constant 1 over 4 pi epsilon 0 with the Newton's gravitational constant g and the charges q and little q with masses m and little m. If we look at the force experienced by unit charge, usually denoted with an E, called electric field, we know that it takes the form given here for a charge q. We also know from electrostatics that such an electric field can be written in terms of a potential in the form minus of gradient of phi, where phi is the electrostatic potential. It is also well known that the electric field for an arbitrary charge distribution rho of r obeys the equation divergence of electric field at any point, any position r being equal to the density of the charge at that point divided by the permittivity of the vacuum. Substituting this form of the electric field in here, we get the equation del square phi equal to minus of rho by epsilon 0. Carrying the analogy of the electrostatic field to the gravitational field, we could write the force experienced by a unit mass due to a charge, a mass distribution rho as del square phi equal to 4 pi times the Newton's constant into the density of mass distribution. Observe that the minus sign is not present here because of the presence of a minus sign in the expression for the force, which takes into account the attractional nature of the gravitational force. The factor of 4 pi came due to the fact that I am replacing 1 by epsilon 0 with 4 pi times g in the expression. It must be noted that this equation has been written down with a choice of units in which speed of light is dimensionless as well as has value unity. This equation will serve as the starting point to find the dynamical equations governing gravitational field. While trying to find the dynamical equations governing gravitational field, we will keep in mind that whatever equations result must be such that they should look the same for all observers. Well, this is the restatement of the postulate of relativity that laws of physics must be the same for all observers. This equation has a direct mathematical implication, which is to say that whatever equations that we write down must be expressed in terms of tensors. This is due to the fact that tensors are the quantities that have the same form for all observers in all coordinate systems. Now coming back to the starting point equation, which is this, let us focus on the term on the right hand side. The term on the right hand side, apart from the constants 4 pi g, has a factor of rho, the mass density. If we recollect our discussion of fluid, we would recognize that this factor of rho was nothing but the 0, 0 component of energy momentum tensor in a particular reference frame, particular choice of reference frame, which we called momentarily co-moving reference frame. To briefly say what an MCRF is, it is that frame chosen at a point where you are observing the fluid element, in which the fluid element at that point is at rest momentarily at the time of observation. So I could replace the right hand side of this equation with T00 in a momentarily co-moving reference frame. The left hand side of this equation still remains to be identified with any one of the tensors. Observe that T00 was one particular component of a tensor. In order to identify the left hand side of this equation also with a certain tensor component, let's recollect our discussion of Newtonian limit of geodesic equation. When we consider the Newtonian limit of the geodesic equation, we considered a weak gravitational field for which the metric was written as the flat metric eta mu nu plus some perturbation h mu nu. In there, we considered appropriate limit in which h mu nu was much smaller than 1 for all values of mu and nu, and thereby try to show that geodesic equation reduced to the Newton's law. In the process, we showed that a weak static gravitational field could be described with an H00, which turned out in that case to be equal to -2 times the gravitational potential phi, which is exactly the quantity that we have on the left hand side of this equation. If we make use of this fact, we could write the left hand side of this equation again in terms of an appropriate contravariant quantity derived out of this by multiplying this with the flat space metric twice, whose value will also be equal to -2 times phi. Replacing phi with this contravariant quantity, we get minus of del square times H00 divided by 2 to be equal to 4 pi g into T00, or del square H00 to be equal to minus 8 pi g times T00. So this equation now has a form in which the right hand side and left hand side of this equation could be identified with mu equal to 0, nu equal to 0 component of some tensor. On the right hand side, it is clear that that tensor could have been T mu nu. Although on the left hand side, it is not yet clear what that quantity is, because the quantity on the left hand side is not simply H00 but a second derivative of H00, a type of quantity that we have probably not directly seen yet. On the right hand side, if you consider the quantity T mu nu to replace T00, it is clear that in the momentarily co-moving reference frame, since the fluid element that we are observing at a given point is at rest, its other components other than T00, which are namely T0i, where I takes spatial values 1, 2 and 3, as well as Tij's, where I and j both take spatial values 1, 2, 3. They are both 0. These are 0 because they are directly proportional to the momentum of the fluid element at that point, or the velocity of the fluid element that we are observing. And in a momentarily co-moving reference frame, the reference frame is moving along with the fluid element at that instant of time, and hence the velocity of the fluid element will turn out to be 0 in MCRF. Due to which, in MCRF we can treat both these to be 0. So this gives us confidence that I could replace T00 with T mu nu, and in the momentarily co-moving reference frame, this would reduce to this form, leaving it all fine. Thus, let me do that by replacing T00 with T mu nu to get a tensorial form for that equation, at least on the right hand side. The question now remains, what should be the left hand side? In order to determine what should appear on the left hand side, we could make use of the properties of T mu nu. There are certain important properties of the T mu nu, the energy momentum tensor of a fluid element, that we have already observed. It is clear that the quantity that is expected to appear on the left must also satisfy the same properties. Let us now decide what quantity should appear on the left hand side of this equation. On the right hand side, we have a contravariant second rank tensor. So it is necessary that we have a similar quantity on the left hand side. Let's write that down first. So we expect a contravariant rank 2 tensor on the left hand side. Next, looking at the earlier equation, we see a second derivative of a metric appearing in that equation. So the quantity that we are expecting on the left hand side must also involve two derivatives of metric. The two derivatives, however, need not always be in the form of a second derivative. It could also be in the form of square or a quadratic term involving first derivatives of metric. So that condition requirement, let's write it down as two derivatives. Now, again, observing the right hand side, we see that the tensor that you have there on the right hand side, the energy momentum tensor, it is symmetric under the interchange of its indices mu and nu. In which case, on the left hand side also, we would expect a symmetric tensor. So that would be our third requirement. One very important property of the energy momentum tensor we had seen earlier is that it satisfies current conservation. Namely, if I consider d mu of T mu nu for all possible values of nu, this must be always equal to 0. This is something that we had learned when we looked at the fluids. This makes it necessary that the quantity that we expect on the left hand side must also have its covariant derivative vanishing. Now, insofar, among the tensorial quantities that we have seen, there are only two quantities that we have found whose covariant derivative vanished. One was the inverse of the metric tensor, G mu nu, and the other was the Einstein tensor, G mu nu, which was represented by a capital G mu nu. Now, if it were G mu nu that appears on the left hand side, it wouldn't satisfy the second condition, because that requires us to have not the metric to appear on the left hand side, but a term that involves two derivatives of metric to appear on the left hand side. So that is completely ruled out. So the next quantity, the only quantity that we are familiar which could potentially occupy the left hand side is the Einstein tensor. So with this, we more or less fix the left hand side to be of this form, that it is the Einstein tensor which is of the form R mu nu minus half G mu nu times the Ricci scalar R, that must appear on the left hand side of this equation. There's one more condition that we could require in addition to all these four conditions, which is that for weak and static gravitational field, the left hand side must reduce to that form, which is what this equation after all tries to describe. This can be easily checked, that for a weak and static gravitational field, G00 takes the form del square of H00, where H00, as I described, is the factor that appears in the inverse of the metric when we consider a gravitational field that is weak and static. So, having seen that Einstein tensor G mu nu satisfies all the requirements on the quantity to appear on the left hand side, we now come to conclude that this must be the form of the equation that governs, the dynamical equation that governs gravitational field. Now observe that what we have done here is not a derivation. We were only trying to argue out the form of the equation from certain properties, certain requirements that it is bound to obey. And this is true for any law of physics. Laws of physics are not expected to be derived mathematically. It is also true that while trying to arrive at this particular form, we may have ignored many other possible terms that appear in this. There's no particular justification for ignoring those terms, except the fact that this is the simplest possible form of the equation that would reproduce the familiar equation for a weak and static gravitational field. These set of equations go by the name Einstein and as equations of motion, they play the same role for the gravitational field as played by the Maxwell's equation for the electromagnetic field. In the following classes, we would see certain solutions of this equation, Einstein equations, that are interesting because they describe many important phenomena involving gravitational field.